My girlfriend and I have been together for about a year. Most everything is great except one thing. If I tell her I'm sick / not feeling well / hurt, she refuses to believe me. If I have a cold, she tells me I'm faking it until it goes away and then says, "See, you are fine." I'm rarely sick, so it's never been a major issue. But she has zero sympathy when I'm sick. She grew up with hypochondriac parents who were always sick with something, often self-diagnosing themselves with fatal maladies. She has limited contact with them, and the time I met them, I was told by them that they didn't have long left to live. I get it, growing up in that household must have been awful. But what happened on Sunday just sent me over the edge. Girlfriend and my sister wanted to check out this event and we were all supposed to go. I woke up with excruciating back pain and could barely breathe. Girlfriend got so mad at me for ruining this that she wouldn't speak to me. As she was about to leave, I asked her not to leave because I thought something was wrong. She said no and left. I threw up in my bed and eventually called my parents. I was too embarrassed to call 911. And my mother and brother hauled me to the hospital. I was whisked back and after 20 minutes I was diagnosed with kidney stones. Fentanyl and gravel, and I had a CT scan and then went for a procedure to bust the kidney stones. 5 hours later and I was laying on my parents' sofa in a haze. I have never, and hope to never, feel pain like that again in my life. I was sure I was going to die. The attending in the told me it's worse than childbirth and that they've had it before, too. I didn't text my girlfriend throughout because I really didn't have the strength or foresight. I was drugged up and uncomfortable. My sister found out that I had been in the emergency room and soon after my girlfriend called me. She was pissed off I didn't call her. Then I reminded her that I begged her not to leave as I thought something was wrong. She got quiet and eked out an apology. I got furious and said something rather nasty things, unsavory things. In fairness, I was on dope, still sore, peeing blood and felt like someone had punched me in the gut. Standing was incredibly painful. I needed to take 2 days off of work and school. I rested in bed and the only thing you can think is the person who should have been there didn't even believe me. She's texted me this week a formal apology and wants one in return for saying nasty things to her. I've been avoiding her texts / calls. I felt like shit this week and picked something up in the So I laid low, took a few days off work and relaxed. She wants to meet tonight and talk about everything, but I'm still so mad I don't know if I should hold off seeing her. Is this as big a transgression as I feel like it is? Am I blowing this out of proportion because I felt so shitty? I just am so annoyed and angry. Girlfriend didn't believe me something was wrong and I wound up in the with kidney stones and needed a procedure. She was mad that I didn't call her, I was too doped up, and then when I blew up at her she felt bad. I'm still mad at her. I live with my parents and my brother. It's always been a dream of my parents to adopt me and bro, our bio kids. And they had come to the decision that they want to adopt an older kid. They got matched with Jess, who is 13. Due to the current situation, she is not living with us, but we've met before and she spent a weekend with us in January. Jess, despite sometimes being sweet and kind, is very high maintenance and has a lot of anxiety and anger problems. She can go from 0 to 1,000 really quick. During her stay, she got triggered by something when we were in public. She and I went to a clothes shop and my parents were in a cafe nearby. Some guy accidentally grabbed her by her shoulder as he thought she was his daughter, and he apologized immediately and started screaming. I was the only person there, and I tried to calm her down but she ran off. She was found, shaken, but safe, an hour later. I then got grounded as I had failed in being responsible for my sister. I said I didn't have a sister. My parents were angry about this and said that how dare I be rude about her, don't I know how much she's been through? She's had other outbursts, but none so huge in public. She can be cold and untrusting and was very clingy to my parents. I do admire her and think she's very brave, but I don't want to live with her. My parents call Jess often. I often say hi and try to be civil and supportive. But it seems like the only thing my parents can talk about is Jess and how brave she is, and she isn't even here yet. We live in a 3-bedroom house, and my parents promised to move to a bigger one later this year. Recently, my parents broke the news to me that Jess will move into my room, and I can pick whether I want to share a room with Bro or Jess. I don't want to share with either. My brother is messy, loud, and is your average 9-year-old boy, and Jess has night terrors and screams the house down. And it's enough having to open my house to her, but I value my privacy a lot and don't want her in my room, which is like my special place. I was crushed. I asked if we were still moving, and my parents were like, "We like this place and have no solid plan." I freaked out and was like, "You guys are forgetting you have another daughter and are too excited about the shiny new one to remember that the one you have has feelings and boundaries, and if you're changing everything I've ever known, at least I deserve to be listened to. If this is how life's going to be, I don't want to have a sister." Good to note, my room is big enough to have a wall put in, and my parents considered it a few years back. I would be happy with that. They refuse, even though we can easily afford it, because it is too much effort. My parents are offended that I'm not being welcoming towards my sister. And I'm offended that the life I knew is going to be turned upside down, and I'm not going to have the thing I value most, my privacy. I believe it started when I was around 6 years old. My parents often had friends over in the house. I didn't know they were polyamorous OFC. One day I was outside playing, got hurt, and when I ran inside caught my parents making out with some random guy. They told me they have other adults that they love and it's a completely normal thing. Me being a child just accepted that. They gave up being secretive and their partners would constantly be around, even joining on outings. I remember that on my 10th birthday they invited 3 of their partners, one of who I'd never seen before. And for the rest of the day my parents just withdrew from my party and hung out with them. I never saw them doing anything explicit again, but they would kiss their partners, hug them, make flirty comments. Something that would be normal between parents, but with many more people. Sometimes I came home from school and my parents were gone and there was some random adult in our house. Some of them seemed surprised that my parents even had a child. I always hated it, but since my parents had told me this was normal, I assumed many adults probably did similar things and that it's just an adult thing all kids hate. Later they had less partners and eventually seemed to stop. Not that I'd know for sure. I moved out with 17. I didn't think about it anymore. A year ago I started therapy, other reasons. As usual the topic of my upbringing came up and it brought back many feelings I wasn't aware of. I realized that although my parents were always good to me, I had never really felt close to any of them and still have a lot of resentment, that they made me feel like I had to compete for my parents' attention with random strangers. A while ago, I visited them and they told me they are going to take part in a documentary about polyamorous families, and that the producers would like to include interviews with the children. So they would love if I could agree and tell everyone that polyamory doesn't mess kids up. All my resentment bubbled up and I said that I cannot agree because I would not be able to say anything positive. My parents looked shocked. I had never brought this up before, and asked why, and I unloaded all, that I always felt pushed aside. We barely had any family time without strangers intruding. It turned into an argument and I became loud and yelled that the truth is it did. Me up and they shouldn't have had a child. My mother cried and my father said I should probably leave. So I left and was shaken up for the rest of the week, but also felt regret because I've never made my mom cry before. Later my father sent me a message that was like, "We are sorry you feel that way. Can we have a calm discussion about this soon?" Even though I tried to, it's like I can't reply. This argument brought something very emotional up in me. My apartment complex didn't do traditional trick or treating on Halloween. Residents were advised to set out pre-packaged individual candy bags on their patios / front door areas if they wanted to participate, but the traditional knock on door, physically hand strangers candy was not permitted. So, Halloween comes and the kids are all dressed up and each building has a scheduled time where the kids go door to door. I ended up having to work late, so my neighbor offered to walk my kids around with hers at our building's scheduled time. About 45 minutes later my kids came home with a small bucket of candy. 6 little goodie bags each from individual apartments that participated. Everything was fine. And my kids didn't say anything weird had happened. They were just excited to eat candy once they got home. The next day I took my kids to the park directly across from our apartment complex. My neighbor was there with her kids as well. The kids were playing and she took out one of those individual goodie bags with candy in it from her purse and started to loudly rummage in it. She ate several pieces of candy and my daughter eventually noticed. Ran up and asked if she could have a piece and my neighbor responded, "Nope, this is my tax candy. Remember that this was my reward for taking you trick or treating last night." I was a little weirded out by that statement and asked what she meant. She said that since she is the one who had to take the kids out, she took 5 bags from each of my kids as a tax. Her son then chimes in and said, "You only took 2 bags from us." She responded with, "But I'm your mom. I was doing OP a favor so they get a higher candy tax." I was thinking about how to respond when I noticed that she was holding a Starburst candy and decided to just smile and nod and go back to watching my kids. I let her continue to finish off the bag of candy and then said, "Hey, aren't you vegan? You know a lot of those candies are made with animal products, right?" I explained what gelatin was and how a lot of those candies are made with it. She was horrified, Googles it and then told her kids that they were leaving. She said something about how she was going to be sick and stormed off. Now she's giving me dirty looks every time we see her and won't let her kids play if she shows up at the park and we are there. My husband thinks I'm an asshole cause I should have either not said anything about the gelatin or said something right away when I noticed. I don't think it's my job to tell a vegan what is and isn't vegan though, and she deserved it for stealing candy from little kids. When we got home from the park after the gelatin incident, I sat my kids down and asked why they didn't tell me that the neighbor took half of their candy. My oldest kid is 6 and my youngest kid is 4. 6-year-old explained that as they went door to door during their designated trick-or-treating time, she would have my 4-year-old grab 2 bags instead of 1 from each apartment for the majority of them. She explained it to my kids that they were grabbing extra bags for her to be handed over at the end as taxation. So either freaking way she was directly taking candy from my kids or taking candy from other kids through mine. As for the authenticity of her vegan sim, I may have exaggerated when I said super vegan when I first posted this. She claims to be vegan and is very in people's faces about the benefits etc. It's 100% about the health side. She brags about veganism curing cancer, diabetes, even some mental health issues. I have never once heard her talk about the benefits for animals. She also sells herbal tea products, customized gym clothing etc. so she totes a pretty big vegan lifestyle. If that makes sense. Now for the gelatin. She knows what gelatin is, she knows what it's made out of, she knows that there are obvious things that she can't eat. But she had no idea that a lot of candy specifically had gelatin apparently. When I told her that they had gelatin in it, she knew what gelatin was but Googled the candies to see if I was correct. I think she is either really dumb or she eats non-vegan stuff all the time when no one's watching, and had to pretend to be horrified about it at this point. Cause a lot of you guys have pointed out that you literally can't be vegan and not know these things. I'm not vegan, I'm not even freaking vegetarian, and I know these things.